Oh, hey there. I want to talk about a movie I saw recently. I saw The Kingsman. It's very confusing for me because there's the Kingsman Secret Service. Then there's the Kingsmen or the Kingsmen, the Golden Circle. Men or man is the question here. So I went to the theaters and I thought it's been out for 8 weeks. I've seen Spider-Man. I like that movie. It's a lot of fun. Um, let's just go see the Kingsmen. I like Ralph Fiennes. Like him better when he doesn't have a nose, preferably. Um, and the trailer didn't do anything for me. I thought I just really, really want to go to the movies. I want to buy a hot dog. I want to sit in a seat and I want to watch a movie. I don't care what. Went in with no expectations. This movie blew me away. Great trailer. Golden Circle, it's okay. I don't like a couple of story beats they took where they're killing off some of the characters that I liked, and then the meat grinder did nothing for me. But Elton John beating with Robot Dog, beating people up in a bowling alley is fun. And the Take Me Home Country Roads, I like the second one, and I'm going to be in the minority here. I really do like the second one. I watched it quite a few times, and there's a couple things I don't love. So I go into this one, I'm like, number one's the best, number two's the second best, right? So number three is probably gonna be like, like maybe the third best, maybe. And I heard a lot of people talking, and people are like, man, this movie's bad, and I'm like, oh. Even Tyler, when you watch a Josh and Tyler show, didn't really love the Kingsman, Kingsman space. Instead of Kingsman no space. So I think, we'll find out. We gotta see the movie for ourselves. And I just really want to go to the movies. So I get there, sit in the seat, me and my wife go, and my dad and my buddy Kevin. So we're all there. We're all sitting down. There's 6 of us in the theater. We're gonna watch the Kingsman. It's a Sunday night, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I get to get out of the house, because I usually just work and sleep like every other drone on the planet, unless you actually have a life. That's difficult these days because you're sitting there thinking, man, I could do things. They closed the laser quest near my house. I have nothing to do. How am I supposed to go around and shoot tiny kids in the arena with lasers when it doesn't exist? I have to drive to freaking London. So there I am. The movie starts. We open it up. We see Ralph Fiennes and his wife, and there's gonna be spoilers in this, just heads. And he goes to like a Red Cross camp in 1902 in Africa somewhere, and they're all going around, and we get this cute little kid saying, like he's Arthur and I'm Lancelot, and I'm like, yeah, that's adorable. I like that, I think kids are cute in movies when they say things like that, and they I like that. And then the mother gets shot and such, and he's like, oh, what is this? And he's talking about decency, and he's being a pacifist. I'm like, okay, I can see it. And then we see the mother die, and this kid like witnesses his mother dies, and we got a solid opening right there. So then we go back to the manor, and we see all this happening, and Ralph Fiennes, one of his servants, doesn't bow, and she's like, no, we have to keep up appearances and such. We don't really get that till later in the film, and so we get into the movie where it's all based around World War II, and we all have to take down this one big head of state who's influencing all these things to help create World War II, whether it be to the White House, to various places all around the world. And then we get a big finale, and they take this guy down, and there's a little surprise reveal there. And I loved it. Like, straight up, I loved it. I think it's better than The Golden Circle. I know people are hating on this movie. No, like, seriously. I'll get into why I love it in a minute, but, like, 43% on Rotten Tomatoes here. Like a 6.5 on IMDb. But there is so much I love about this. Now, I'm a medium-sized Matthew Vaughn fan, Sometimes I like Matthew Vaughn. Like, I think First Class was pretty cool. That's a pretty cool movie. I like Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass is great. I'm probably the only fan of Kick-Ass 2 in the world. I think the six-stick scene in the cafeteria was absolutely hilarious. Better than Family Guy could do vomit any day. I loved it. I think he's done some pretty good work over the years. So, directed by Matthew Vaughn here. I really like the cast he chose. So we got Ralph Fiennes. Um, he plays the main guy, and he has his son. I think his son does a really good job. His son doesn't have a ton to work with at points, but his son does have the most influential storylines of the film that does lead to an impact on the main character. We've got Gemma Arterton as Polly, who is really, really cool. We got some really great moments. I like her in this film a lot. I like the way she influences the group because we get to see, and then we get to see Shala here. Dumont, I'm going to butcher this. DJ I Eman Husun. I tried. And the four of them run this underground thing because the government can't do it. And the son constantly wants to be involved in the war because the son sees but his dad's like, no, you can't go to war. And this is World War One. So yeah, so we get all these people doing that. But we find out eventually that Polly and Shola are working with him, and they've created an underground network of maids, and he's basically trying to gather information. And despite this pacifist image that he puts off, he is actually, quite aggressive in his information gathering and trying to keep peace and save lives. And our whole story is based around this, and I like that. I think it's pretty great. I think the most interesting character in the movie myself, because I think they're all very interesting, and I think the thing this movie does really, really well is give every character a character arc. Ralph Fiennes goes from pacifist to see my wife die, and he gets over it and goes back to his old self, and basically learns how to take down the enemies that he needs to know to save lives because he couldn't save his wife. Gemma Polly goes from, oh look, I'm just a maid, or bring some tea, to I'm actually really, really important to this organization. I'm a brilliant coder. I'm part of the team. You're going to accept me. I like that. She goes from realizing her importance. Shala goes from, oh cool, I'm around, to bringing out the character in Ralph Fiennes as this best friend, this confidant, this person who's so important to his key life and development, who trains his son, who's always by his side, who has so much more skills, equally skilled to Ralph Fiennes, if not more. And his son, Conrad Oxford, played by Harris Dixon, we'll call him Conrad for now, has this sort of role, and his dad said, don't go to war. Don't go to war, don't die for your country. Don't do that. Dying for your country is not worth it. And he has this thing, he's like, no, I have to do it. He'll eventually go on missions, and he eventually, in the movie, does get shot in the trenches because they think he's a German spy, because he switches characters. He switches clothes with this one gentleman and takes his alias because he really wants to go to the front line. He really wants to experience what this is life. And it ends badly for him, and it's the turning point in the movie, which is key for Ralph Fiennes. But the way they stage his character, he's eager to learn, but he doesn't understand what life is. And that's sort of our way into the movie. And I really, really like what they're doing with that. Then we have Charles Dance as Kitchener. He plays a general who's basically going into this war with no consequences. And when we see his death later in the film, when he's on a boat, he realizes there's that moment of realization of 5 million soldiers dead in World War I. And I like his character arc. It's not a ton of screen time, but it's very simple and effective because you see him sort of look at and just sort of analyze what we need to do. What we need to do to get this done. But then he realizes the impact of it, but he doesn't have time to pay for that impact. I think there's things in life that we go through that we don't really understand, and we don't know how to quantify, and we don't know how to do until it's too late. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And then we have our villain of the movie, and our villain of the movie is quite interesting. So we set up the politics. And again, these are spoilers. Everyone, there's spoilers in this. I'm going to put that in the description there. I said that multiple times. So we have two villains. We have Rasputin, which I think is really, really interesting. And the only thing I would have liked to see this movie do different is I like Rasputin to last till the end, but I think what this movie does is subvert expectations. Because we think Rasputin's going to last till the end, but he lasts about half the film because he's not the villain. He's not the hero. he is a very complicated, complex character. I think they really modeled him sort of off the Joker. He's a mad monk based upon an actual historical character, because a lot of people in this movie are based on historical characters. This is, again, the start of World War One with the assassination of Duke Ferdinand. And I think the way it uses history and its characters to frame it and sort of modifies it to fit the film is quite fascinating. Now, a lot of history buffs are like, it needs to be accurate. Well, then you can go watch a documentary, because this is a movie. Movies are never actually accurate to history. Um, Except for maybe A Bridge Too Far, or one of those. Maybe 12 O'Clock High is slightly accurate, but I doubt it. I doubt it. But Rasputin is complicated. He's a monk. We get his history. We get that he's very influential in Russia, because Russia, Germany, and I think it's Austria, yeah, are feuding. And he's very influential, and he's basically with this evil organization run by the one gentleman who I didn't even realize was the villain until the end, because we never really see him. There's this reveal at the end, and you're like, oh, we always see his shadow. All we see is like the edge. All we see is his face. We see this sort of Blofeld effect for the first film. We see his hand. We see the edge. We don't know anything about him. We don't even really know his voice that well, because his voice isn't that distinctive. And I think that works really well, because there's something, because the action is really, really subdued in this movie, and I like that. I don't think we don't need to have another outrageous action movie. I think if you were to watch these in order, they would build, build, build. And I think people were expecting a lot of that sort of Kingsman over the top, swords for legs, or like meat grinder action. I think that's what everyone was expecting. But this movie is more subdued. It's a very different genre. Well, the first one in the movie is over the top and silly, this sort of just fun, great action flick with Eggsy discovering, his past. And the second one is this sort of almost parody of the original itself, parodying the spy genre and the ridiculousness of it. This one is a serious spy movie. They're all very different movies. They're all very different paced. They're all very different edited. They are all very, very different movies, and I think that what makes this franchise charming. They're not trying to make the same movie 3 times in a row. They're trying to make something unique every time you go to see it. And I think audiences are expecting more of the same. When you go to see a Marvel movie, you expect that no hero will ever die. You expect some quippy jokes. You expect a fun battle, some bright colors, a little bit of CG, and you expect the same 3-story act. And well, this movie does have the same 3-act story from the first one, where we set up the problem, they go to try to stop it, it doesn't quite work, because that's not actually the problem, and then they go and stop the problem at the end, at the secret base or whatever, and they end it with some consequence. That's what this movie does. That's what the second one does. That's what the third one does. They all have a base. Samuel L. Jackson's in the first one is a base. The middle point is the church. In the one with the golden circle, Poppy is the end, and she's also the middle with the one agent we're thinking being there, who gets the robotic eye, but that's not quite the villain. And in this one, we get the middle act where it's set in World War II, but that's really not the villain. That's the villain to Ralph Fiennes' character, and that's the character development we get in this film. And the main villain is the gentleman on the mountain, or you could even phrase that as Rasputin for the second act villain. And I think this movie does something very uniquely charming and well. I think it nails the script. And no one's going to agree with this review, because I don't think anyone actually likes this movie except for me. And maybe, the people I saw it with, because I had a blast. And I haven't stopped thinking about it. This is the movie that left more of an impression on me than Spider-Man. Spider-Man was great, but this movie, for me, had brilliant editing from beginning to end. Sound design, editing, the way it moves around, the way it uses the creative shots, the way it uses just a sprinkling of the fantastical mixed in with your basic setup shots, the way it uses the sets it's given, and it does a really good job of using this lighting, the way it lights Rasputin, different to Ralph Fiennes, the way it ensembles the team, giving us an Avengers style, a Lethal Weapon team up, even sort of buddy cop elements with Shala and with Oxford. It plays with a lot of genres. I don't think people are giving this movie enough credit. The way it gives every character, big or small, a character arc. Every character is a character arc. Even the mother, who has one moment of screen time, we know that she's caring. We know that she has a son. We know that she's protective. We know that she's loving. We know that she's going to walk into this camp and she's going to save all those people because she wants to bring people help. We know that she's helping in kind. That contributes to Ralph Fiennes' characters. Every single character in this room has an arc. The way when Rasputin walks in, and he walks in with the with the ladies of the night, we'll call it there. And they walk around the room, the way they look at people, that has more character development in its baby toe than most side characters in most films. The way they expand this world out, the way the little dialogue they have to say. They don't have to say Rasputin is important. They don't have to say that. They just show it. They show, not tell. They're not giving you constant exposition. They're not telling you what they're looking for or how they're doing it. Yeah, there's a few scenes on a big old mountaintop with goats that, he just gives them an assignment. He doesn't say why he's doing it. He doesn't say what it will contribute to. We don't even know the villain's purpose. It adds an element of mystery. And I can see why people wouldn't like that, because it's definitely not your straightforward action thriller. It's definitely not something that you would necessarily think for this franchise, but it's nice to see something that's not exactly the same, but takes its time for the characters. And this finale, when they do get the finale, so the middle finale is World War II. He's in World War II. He switched places with this Archie character, and he volunteers to go on a mission to recover the information from a spy. So he goes out there, and it's very interesting because at the beginning of the film, they set this up. He's fighting with knives, and she's like, no, you should use guns. Shoots the thing right out of there. And so because of his training that he's been given, he's able to get through this knife fight and get away. And it's very interesting to see something in World War II that's not a gunfight. They did everything that you don't expect. And that's what I like about this movie. There's nothing I can compare this to because they don't do what you expect. When he gets back from the trenches, he's killed because they think he's a traitor, even because they're like, no, I've been looking for my buddy Archie. Boom, he has that information, a telegram that leads to that. We get to see a little bit of the White House there in that final third, or set up to the third act, where we see that this organization has set this up. And we don't really see, we just say, go make it happen. We see this shadowless villain. We don't know who this villain is. We know he's orchestrating, but we don't know what it is he's doing. And then we see the film, and the U.S. needs to join the war to do this. And boom. And then we get to this big act where it's a very smart act, where there's only three of them. They have to get up a mountain, and Ralph finds this, like, there's some very clever bits here where they all get their own moment to shine in here. And it's all fencing, and the villain never reveals himself until Ralph Fiennes calls out of the shadows, and we realize that he was working for General Kitchener all along, orchestrated his death, and he's been going from point A to point B, basically causing chaos. We don't know why he's causing chaos. We don't know why he wants a war. We don't know why they want peace. We don't even know if he makes any money off of this. He's just causing chaos. He's the man in the shadows. And is this something Ralph Fiennes is causing? This is a very interesting villain because we don't know his motivations. We just know that he sends people to do tasks. He expects them to do it, and they give him full loyalty. I like that they don't fully explain it. I know for some people that'd be that'd be a turnoff. They're like, oh, we gotta know everything. Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't need a Spielbergian Ready Player One or E.T. wrap-up where everything is perfect and everyone goes home and the person gets to the video game session, but all their friends are safe and they actually get ice cream because they wanted ice cream at the beginning of the movie, and they got their $1 million and they're happily ever after because they need to save their boat underground. We don't get that. We get an unsatisfying ending with them defeating it, and the ending of the movie is not the point is, he's not trying to end the war. He's trying to find himself. And he finally finds himself. He gets back to who he is. He ends the war as a plot of this, but World War I still takes place regardless, and the U.S. evolves, and people still die, but he finally finds who he is, and he has saved 5 million lives. He's been a pacifist while being aggressive. And that's the point of this story. It's not, it's not one of them fleshed out from point A to point B. Everything makes perfect sense. There's a lot to dissect. There's a lot of rewatch value in this film. And this is a movie I could watch 12 times, and I think I could get something out of every time, as opposed to, I enjoyed Spider-Man a lot. And Spider-Man's great, and I'll do a review of that one of these days. Everyone's done a review of Spider-Man. That movie's fun. I like it a lot. It's got some great cameos. It's got some great characters. I think what they do with the story and the arc is really great. But I don't think it has as much rewatch value. I don't think you could go back and see things below the surface or dissect the dialogue and be like, I wonder what that means. No, it's all clear, it's cut and dry. I mean, Fast and Furious is cut and dry, cars jump out of airplanes, and that's a lot of fun. But I think there's room for an action thriller or a dramatic thriller where we explore emotions, we explore characters, and we give this very subdued sense of action. And the finale on the mountain is not overly fantastic. It reminds me a lot of For Your Eyes Only, but not incredibly. We get to see him parachute down. It ends in a sword fight, sort of a cat and mouse game. It's more psychological than heavily actioned. And I think it's utterly brilliant for that. I think it actually is doing something that a lot of movies are not. I think it's giving us a 70s action thriller, a Count of Monte Cristo style pacing. And it's brilliantly edited. The sound is genius. The way it uses its shots, it doesn't overly use too many close-ups, doesn't too many wides. It balances out all it's seen from point A to point B. We know where we are in the film, even though it uses 8 locations. It's very set up, very nice that way. It's not the Inception route where we have 8 locations and it bounce, and eventually we're like, well, things are just happening. We should accept it because it's Christopher Nolan. Even though that movie has some fantastic acting, I just think it moves too fast in the third act. Maybe I just can't follow it. Maybe I'm stupid. But this movie, I think, is brilliant. I think from point A to point B, this is a brilliant film that in years will become to be appreciated. I think that people don't really know what to get out of the Kingsman franchise these days. I think they're expecting over-the-top, silly sort of anti-James Bond, where it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's a lot of fun. And I think they're expecting, the movie to just go without stopping. But that's not this movie. This movie is the backstory, the character piece, where Ralph Fiennes' character, to the people around it, to the history of Kingsman. The way it uses the setting. Every setting is important. World War II teaches morality to this kid, which taught morality to his father. The Kingsman shop eventually becomes what it needs to be, this tailor, this suit. The way they use the suit, he wants him to have a regular suit, not a bullet suit or a smoking jacket. The way this suit, this sort of like the skin we wear, is what we're putting on, and we shouldn't try to put on, something that we're not in this case. You could dissect that however you like, but the Kingsman is an important setting. The White House, the way they use the White House, because they have previously established the network for the maids and stewards and chauffeurs and all the working class across the world, works really well because we see it from the perspective of the aide to the president who'll bring him bourbon on the rocks when he needs it. The way he does that is very, very clever, and that we immediately recognize this because we recognize the network working. The way it uses the ship that they're using to get over there. They know that this is an isolated ship. They use the ocean. We know that he's isolated in this area. When we see Kitchener in the boat before his death, we know that he doesn't really grasp the reality of it. He's isolated on an ocean on a boat. He's the only one in his bubble, so he doesn't understand people dying, how that effective is. And that contrasts the trenches with the overcrowding, the bombing of the cities. And then we see the feuding between these 3 brothers. From Russia, Austria, and Germany. And we see these 3 people basically feuding over nothing. And they even say it. They're feuding over nothing. It's all about power. They give us a tiny little backstory, but the characters speak for themselves. The way he is constantly being manipulated by this gentleman who becomes very, very important in the film later and during the post-cut sequence with a monocle. The way he can easily manipulate it because he wants to be the best, because he constantly never got over that he had to feud with his brothers. The way Russia is under the influence of this religious monk, how it comments on the system at the time and how the religion would rule it. And we get to see a little bit of the Marxist revolution in this as well, and we get to see a little bit of the social change that happens. And then in Austria, we get to see, Austria, and we get to see the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand, which I don't think I've ever seen on film. Obviously, this is not exactly accurate, but I think the way to do the mustaches and the costuming is a lot of fun. Like, it's a fun, dramatic film that I enjoy every last minute of. I think this movie is not getting the love it deserves. I don't get it. This is a really, really well done thriller movie with action elements. And I think people were expecting heavy action with silly lisps and meat grinders. And that's not what this movie is. Every movie in the franchise is very, very different. No movie is the same. It's not going to be the same carbon cutty puzzle piece cutout with the same little frosting and sprinkles every time and the same gag. It's not. This movie is a very unique piece of art, and maybe it doesn't fit the Kingsman franchise for everyone, but for me, this is a great movie. This is fantastic. I love this film. I already placed my pre-order. I can't wait to watch this again. I might go check it out in theaters again, but I do got to check out Death on the Nile very, very soon. But seriously, I'm just trying to understand why people don't like this movie. Like the actual critic score is what, 43%, and the audience score is 80,000. So, what are the critics not loving about this film? See, again, they're comparing through most of what made the original Kingsman a fun ride is largely lost in the prequel. This is not the original Kingsman. This is something else. This is a very different style of film. Either a 007 inspired film, comes to Kingsman, feels stale. I don't think this feels stale. I think it feels very, very fresh for a box office of this time. I think it's nice to see a different type of movie. Part satire, part adventure. It fails on both. I don't think it's satire. I think it's taking itself very, very seriously like the Kingsman does, and I think that's the charm of it. And I think that's where the humor comes from for a lot of the franchise. It takes itself very seriously no matter what they're tackling. And I think this works really well as a thriller. You can't take the villain seriously. I love the villain. The villain is all over the place. He's very interesting. Before he kills Ralph Fiennes, he heals his leg. There's a level of compassion to him. He's not just a cut and dry villain. And we don't know his motivations. We never know the motivations. If you've seen the other Kingsman movie, I think you can watch this on its own merit. Yeah, you could watch this on its own merits. I want to see what the audience think. Because I've never been one for reviews, but now I'm very curious because, I'm going to go, I never read a review before I go see a movie, and maybe I'll talk to my buddy Tyler, yeah. Went in with low expectations, but the film was a pleasant surprise. See, that I went in because everyone told me it was horrible, and I loved it. Fun movie with events participating during World War I, bloody dark, and comedic. There is a little bit of comedy, yeah. Though it has the plot on the heart of the original, the pacing and character development lags. This is not the original. This is not the same movie. And it works on its own, and every movie should work on its own. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, you have to like that first one to like it. This movie, you're wrong. This is not an insult to the Kingsman movie, Mr. Blaston R. It's a cool name, though, Blaston. Man, if I was blasting down the street, I'd be blasting some music. I'd be blasting that, a little bit of Kendrick Lamar with DNA, or maybe a little Trogdor from Strong Bad. I feel this is one of those movies I feel Rotten Tomatoes may be a little too harsh on. Exactly. Very enjoyable film. Feels like three different movies. I think it all ties together well. I think the overall themes are more important than being a heavy action movie. Someone really enjoyed it. I think the audience is very, 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 very split on this movie. This is going to be one of those movies. I think that, I think in 10 years, people are going to say, oh, the Kingsman Secret Service is really good, but that Kingsman movie is probably my second favorite. And it's going to be my second favorite right now. I think it's people, if you're not going to like the movie and you're going to leave a review, you got to tell me what you don't like. You got to be a little more specific. Now here's someone criticizing history, it given a dream. This person just hates the franchise. Absolutely horse shot. They put an at instead of an I of a movie. Even worse than the previous. Half a star. I want to see what this other person has rated. You ever just go through and you're like, I wonder what they rated. They rated this movie only. Nothing else. They just rated this movie. They came on Rotten Tomatoes to rate this single movie. Oh my goodness. Same old story, no creative formula. But I think the same old story works, but doing different emotional element instead. This person watched it at home. They thought it'd be a mess in theaters, but they gave it 4 stars. See, this is what I don't get. People will tell me how much they hate the movie, and they're like, oh, but it's 4 stars. What do ratings mean? Are you a Nielsen? Are you a jug of milk? Do you just rate things to be popular? Maybe Hungry S does. Maybe he wanted to be different. Whatever made the first movie so incredible and amazing worth watching is missing from this one. The style, the mystery, the action, the wit. See, again, they have the style. They have Matthew Vaughn's very unique style. The way they do close-ups and transition shots, and the way they use a simple lighting palette is fantastic there. The action, again, this is not an action-heavy movie. This is a thriller. This is a thriller movie. I think this movie's good tying to history, not accurate. Well, obviously, it's a movie. Movies are not accurate. I only believe they only have to be 10% happy. This person said I was hoping this prequel to the other Kingsman movie, and they liked it. They liked it. I think this is very, very split. This movie is all over the place. I expected an epic scene of Rasputin, but they managed to turn a joke. I don't think they turned it into a joke. I think it had a very meaningful fight scene. He came in. He went to heal his leg because he's genuinely a helper. Because he didn't see any remorse or need to fight this guy. He didn't see him as his enemy. So when he exposed him as his enemy, despite the pain, that was more impactful than having be like, I'm bad, you're good, we must fight now. I'd rather see a more complicated scene between characters you're going to fight an enemy and they show compassion and mercy, but then try to kill you is much more fascinating than trying to just show a bad guy. He's bad. That's every Slytherin ever. They have no motivation except we are evil because reasons. Tried to predict this, but German part. Glad the Galaxy scene, Main Street got it wrong. I agree. Massive disappointment. Third installment trilogy. British nationalism. Of course, this is set during World War One. This is all about British people. Of course, it's going to have nationalism. So, obviously, that's not your thing. It's not for you. Love the movie. Great movie. Again, this movie, I think, blew my mind. And I'm not a British nationalist, and, I'm trying to stay out of politics, If anything, I want to avoid all the stuff that's going on in the world in the news. I just catch what people tell me. My wife is like, hey, did you hear this thing is happening? Or my sister in Ottawa is like, that thing's happening. I'm just like, nah, I ain't got time for this. I don't need more stress. Honestly, if you ever watch the news, you're just stressed. But I love The Kingsman. I highly recommend The Kingsman. I think you need to go in and expect a very interesting 70s style thriller that has a political agenda, but also an emotional agenda. At the end of the day, with some really good acting and great storytelling. I think this movie's fantastic. I don't know what the critics are smoking or baking or cooking or throwing out the window at large aquatic land animals. But this is a fantastic movie. I love The Kingsman. Kingsman. One of these days we'll get it right. It's an A or an E or a TLC. Something like that. Well, I guess that's it. I ran out of things to say. I like that movie. It's a really good movie.